I was paying for my sister's college education working 2 jobs. Then she called me a loser at a family dinner, and the words hung in the air like smoke from a gun I didn't know was loaded. My chest tightened. The fork slipped from my fingers, clattering against the porcelain plate with a sound that seemed to echo in the suddenly silent dining room. For 5 years, I had bled myself dry, my health, my savings, my dignity, so that Lila could play pretend at adulthood while I footed the bill. And this was my reward, public humiliation, served with a side of her entitled smirk. If you're watching this video, give it a like, subscribe to the channel, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. Now let's get to the story. Katherine Cluck, 32 years old, with silver threading through dark hair that hadn't been cut in 8 months and permanent shadows carved beneath my eyes, had always been the responsible one. The dependable one. The invisible one. But as I sat there, watching my parents' uncomfortable glances and Lila's self-satisfied expression, something inside me, something that had been bending for years, finally snapped clean in two. They had mistaken my love for an endless well. Tonight, they'd learned that even wells run dry. The dinner had started innocently enough. Sunday evening at my parents' house, the ritual we'd maintained since Lila started college. Mom's famous pot roast, Dad's awkward attempts at small talk, and Lila holding court like visiting royalty, regaling us with stories from campus that always seemed to require my financial support to make possible. I'd arrived late, still in my scrubs from a 12-hour shift at Mercy General. My feet ached. My lower back screamed with each movement. I'd skipped lunch, again, to save the $8 that would otherwise go to cafeteria food. $8 I could put toward Lila's electricity bill, which was somehow always twice what mine was, despite her apartment being half the size. The smell of home cooking should have been comforting. Instead, it made my stomach clench with a hunger I'd grown used to ignoring. Katherine. My mother's voice was bright with forced cheer as I entered. We were just talking about Lila's spring semester. She's taking the most fascinating art history seminar. That costs an extra $800 in lab fees, Lila interjected smoothly, flashing me that practiced smile. The one that used to feel like sunshine but now felt like a calculation. But it's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity with Professor Hendricks. He literally wrote the textbook on Renaissance sculpture. I lowered myself into my chair, every muscle protesting. That's great. You look exhausted, honey, Dad said, his brow furrowing. Not from concern, I'd learned, but from worry that my exhaustion might interfere with my ability to keep funding his favorite daughter's dreams. 14-hour shift, I muttered, accepting the plate Mom passed me. Pot roast, mashed potatoes, green beans. Food I used to love that now just looked like evidence of a domestic comfort I no longer had access to. My own dinners consisted of whatever was cheapest, ramen, eggs, toast. Sometimes just coffee. You work too hard, Mom said, her tone carrying that particular combination of pity and expectation that made my jaw clench. I work this hard because you raised one daughter to expect everything and the other to provide it, I thought. But I said nothing. I never said anything. So about those lab fees, Lila continued, stabbing a green bean with surgical precision. I'll need them by Friday. The deadline's pretty strict. Just like that. No preamble. No acknowledgement that $800 was nearly half my rent. No question of whether I could pay it, just the assumption that I would. I looked at her across the table, really looked at her. At 23, Lila was everything I'd once been before life and sacrifice had worn me down to nothing. Glossy hair styled in perfect waves, manicured nails painted a trendy coral shade, a designer sweater I'd seen her post on Instagram last week with the caption, "Treating myself," cost $240, also paid by me, though she'd conveniently forgotten to mention that detail to her 3,000 followers. She looked successful. Polished. Like someone who had her life together. I looked like someone who'd been hit by a truck, repeatedly, for half a decade. I don't have $800 right now, I said quietly. The table went still. You'd think I'd announced I was dying. What do you mean? Lila's perfectly shaped eyebrows drew together. The deadline's Friday, Katherine. I already told you. You didn't tell me anything until 30 seconds ago. Well, I'm telling you now. Her voice carried that edge of irritation, like I was being deliberately difficult. Can't you just, I don't know, pull an extra shift or something? Pull an extra shift. As if I had shifts left to pull. As if my body wasn't already running on fumes and spite. Lila, Dad interjected carefully, maybe you could talk to the professor, see if there's a payment plan. I'm not going to look poor in front of Professor Hendricks, Lila snapped. Then, softer, calculated, I just think it's important to invest in my education. This could open doors, you know. Lead to internships, connections. The word, invest, nearly made me laugh. An investment implied returns. What returns had I seen? A sister who couldn't remember my birthday. Parents who viewed me as a solution rather than a daughter. A life so small and constrained that I couldn't remember the last time I'd done something just for myself. Katherine's right, Mom said, and for one wild moment, I thought she might actually support me. $800 is a lot. She paused, then added, maybe you could pick up some tutoring? You've been saying you wanted more students. Of course. More work for me. Never less expectation from Lila. I already tutor 4 nights a week, I said flatly. On top of my nursing shifts. I barely sleep as it is. It's just a few more weeks, Lila said, leaning forward with that expression she used when she wanted something. Wide eyes, soft voice, the performance of vulnerability. Just until I get through this semester. Then I'll figure something out, I promise. I'd heard that promise before. Sophomore year, just until I settle in. Junior year, just until I finish my practicum. Senior year, now, just until graduation. The promises were always temporary. The payments never were. You could get a job, I said. The words came out harder than I intended, sharpened by 5 years of swallowed resentment. Lila's face shifted. The vulnerability vanished, replaced by something cold and sharp. A job? Are you serious right now? People work through college all the time. Yeah, people who don't have options. She sat back, crossing her arms. People who aren't focused on building a real future. I'm networking, Katherine. I'm making connections that'll actually matter after graduation. I can't do that if I'm stuck working some dead-end retail position. Dead end. The way she said it, like the work I did, the nursing that paid for her entire existence, was somehow beneath her. My nursing job isn't dead end, I said quietly. I didn't mean, she waved a hand dismissively. That's different. You're established. I'm still building. There's a difference between your situation and mine. Yes. The difference was that I'd built my life while she burned through mine like kindling. The point is, Lila continued, her voice taking on that lecturing tone she'd perfected in her communications classes, I'm investing in relationships and experiences that'll pay off long term. You wouldn't understand, your life isn't exactly moving forward. The room went silent. Even my parents looked shocked. What did you just say? My voice came out strange. Distant. Like it belonged to someone else. Lila had the grace to look uncomfortable for approximately 3 seconds before doubling down. I just mean, you've been doing the same thing for years. Same job, same apartment, same everything. You're stuck. And I get that you're bitter about it, but that's not my fault. Stuck. Bitter. My fault. The words landed like physical blows. I thought about my bank account, $247 until payday. I thought about the promotion I'd turned down because it required relocation and I couldn't leave while Lila still needed me. I thought about Marcus, the doctor who'd asked me out 6 months ago, whose texts I'd eventually stopped answering because I was too exhausted to date, too broke to go anywhere, too ashamed to explain why. I thought about the master's degree I'd planned. The trip to Ireland I'd dreamed of. The life I'd imagined before it became about making someone else's life possible. You're right, I said softly. My life isn't moving forward. Lila's face brightened, mistaking agreement for capitulation. But not because I'm stuck, I continued, meeting her eyes. Because for 5 years, I've been funding yours. The brightness dimmed. Every shift I pull, every tutoring session, every meal I skip, it all goes to you. Your rent. Your tuition. Your lab fees and sorority dues and spring break trips. I'm not stuck, Lila. I'm drowning. And you're the anchor. Katherine, Dad started. No. I stood, my chair scraping loudly against the floor. I'm done. No more rent money. No more tuition. No more lab fees or car insurance or credit card payments. You want to study art history with Professor Hendricks? Figure it out yourself. Lila's face went white, then red. You can't just, you're my sister. And you, I said, my voice steady despite the trembling in my hands, just called me a bitter loser who's going nowhere. So here's your chance to prove you're better than me. Make it work without my money. I grabbed my purse and walked toward the door. Behind me, chaos erupted. Mom's shocked protests. Dad's attempts to mediate. Lila's voice rising to a pitch I'd never heard before. You can't do this. You're ruining my life. I paused at the threshold, looking back at the sister I'd sacrificed everything for. No, Lila, I said quietly. I'm finally saving mine. The door closed behind me with a soft click that sounded like freedom. The drive home from my parents' house should have felt liberating. Instead, my hands shook on the steering wheel, adrenaline and 5 years of suppressed rage coursing through my veins. I'd done it. I'd actually said no. But as the streetlights blurred past, guilt crept in with familiar ease. Because saying no to Lila meant remembering why I'd said yes in the first place. 5 years earlier. Lila had been 17 and unstoppable. I could still picture her bursting through our parents' front door with an envelope clutched like a winning lottery ticket. It came. It came, she'd shrieked. The acceptance letter. Hillcrest University. Mom cried. Dad lifted Lila off her feet in a bear hug. And I stood in the kitchen doorway, still in my scrubs from Mercy General, watching my baby sister glow with the kind of joy that makes you forget everything else exists. She'd been beautiful in that moment. Not just physically, though Lila had always been the pretty one, but with radiant potential that made you believe she could be anything. I knew you'd get in, I'd said, hugging her. You're brilliant, Lila. At the celebration dinner that night, Dad pulled me aside. His face carried that expression of parental discomfort, a man about to ask for something he knows he shouldn't. Katherine, honey, your mother and I are so proud of Lila. But the tuition, we don't have college savings. Hillcrest is $35,000 a year, not counting room and board. I felt the weight settling onto my shoulders. The unspoken question. We wouldn't ask if we had any other option, he continued quietly. But you're doing well, you've got steady work, and Lila's got such potential. This school could change her whole life. What about my life? I thought. But I didn't say it. Because I was 27 and employed and single, and what did I need money for anyway? I can help, I heard myself say. Until she gets settled, finds a campus job. Dad's relief was immediate. Just to get her started. We knew we could count on you. I told myself it would be temporary. A year, maybe 2. I was catastrophically wrong. First semester, textbooks. $800 for 5 classes. I put it on my credit card, told myself I'd pay it off quickly. Then dorm expenses. Everyone has mini fridges and microwaves, Lila explained. Another $300. Second semester, a laptop. Hers had died, though I later saw on Instagram she'd spilled wine on it at a party. $1,200 for a new MacBook. Sophomore year, she moved off campus. The dorms are so restrictive. I need my own space to focus. The apartment cost $1,400 monthly. Her half was $700, plus utilities, plus internet, plus insurance. When her roommate moved out, Lila decided she needed to live alone. Just until I find a new roommate, she promised. She never looked. By junior year, I was working double shifts at the hospital and tutoring 4 nights a week. My life became fluorescent lights and other people's problems, patients in the ICU, struggling students, my sister's endless needs. Wake at 5 a.m. 12-hour nursing shift. Rush home. Tutor from 6 p.m. to 10 p.m. Collapse near midnight. Repeat. My studio apartment became just a place to sleep. The furniture I'd planned to buy remained theoretical. My refrigerator contained condiments and little else. Meanwhile, Lila's Instagram told a different story. At Lila Cluck, brunch with my girls. Clinking glasses sparkles, mimosas and eggs Benedict at the city's trendiest cafe. At Lila Cluck, retail therapy after finals smiling face with heart eyes, shopping bags from Nordstrom and Anthropology. At Lila Cluck, spring break countdown. Palm tree, bikini and plane tickets visible. Each post was a knife I'd paid for, wielded by someone who didn't even realize she was cutting me. My parents called every few weeks to check in, but conversations always circled back to Lila. She's doing so well, Mom would gush. Dean's List again. We're so proud. That's great, I'd say, staring at my collection notice for a medical bill I couldn't afford because I'd paid Lila's car insurance instead. You should be proud too. You're making this possible for her. Should. That word carried so much weight. Should be proud. Should be grateful I could help. Should stop being selfish. Your sister needs a new laptop bag, Dad mentioned once. Hers broke. Maybe $60? $60. My week's groceries. Sure, Dad. You're a good sister, Katherine. Lila's lucky to have you. Lucky. As if my sacrifice was a cosmic gift rather than a choice I made every day, every shift, every declined invitation. The worst part was how invisible I'd become. My 30th birthday came with a text from Lila, "Happy birthday. Birthday cake by the way, did you send this month's rent?" Landlords being weird about late fees. No card. No call. Just a reminder that even on my birthday, I existed primarily as her ATM. My 31st birthday, I worked 16 hours and came home to find my power shut off. I'd forgotten to pay the bill, too busy ensuring Lila's electricity stayed on. I cried in the dark that night, eating cold leftovers by candlelight, wondering when I'd stopped being a person and become just a resource. Late February. A Tuesday. I was scrolling Instagram during my lunch break when Lila's post appeared. At Lila Cluck, impromptu girls trip to wine country. Sometimes you just need to escape and recharge wineglass 2 hearts. Photos showed Lila and friends at a luxury vineyard resort. Professional tastings. A suite overlooking hills. Michelin-starred dinner. Her caption, "Living my best life." I looked up the resort. $400 per night. Plus activities. Plus meals. Plus wine. My hands shook. I'd skipped breakfast that morning to save money. I was wearing 4-year-old scrubs. I'd cancelled my gym membership, Netflix, every small luxury to make room for Lila's big ones. And she was living her best life on my dime without acknowledging I existed. I called her that night. "Hey. What's up?" She sounded bright, cheerful. "That trip looked nice." "Oh my God, it was amazing. We found this tiny winery." "How'd you afford it?" Silence. "What do you mean?" "The resort. The tastings. That looked expensive." "Katherine, I work hard. I deserve to relax sometimes. Besides, Jenna's parents paid for most of it. I only covered my food and stuff." My food and stuff. Probably $300. Money from the credit card I'd given her, for emergencies. Lila, that card is supposed to be. God, why are you always worried about money? It's not like I'm being irresponsible. I'm networking. Jenna's dad works in marketing, these connections matter. Networking. Every expense justified by theoretical future value to her career, her dreams. Never mind that my dreams had died of malnutrition. I can't keep doing this, I whispered. Doing what? Being dramatic? She laughed. Look, I have to go. We're getting dinner. Love you. She hung up before I could respond. 3 weeks later, I stopped for gas after an overnight shift. My tank was nearly empty, my body running on fumes. I swiped my card for $30. Declined. I tried again. Same result. My checking account should have had $150. I'd been careful, tracked everything. Standing under harsh fluorescent lights, exhausted and confused, I pulled up my banking app. The charge that drained my account, $1,100 to Lila's apartment complex. Her rent. Autopay I'd set up 2 years ago and forgotten about because it had become background noise in my financial ruin. My rent. Her rent. All the rents, paid while I couldn't afford gas. I sat in my car in that parking lot and cried. Ugly, gasping sobs that made my whole body shake. I cried until my throat was raw and the shift supervisor came out to check on me. I'm fine, I lied. But I wasn't fine. I was breaking. That night, I sat on my apartment floor and made a list. Every expense. Every payment. Every sacrifice over 5 years. The total made me nauseous. $127,000. $127,000. The cost of Lila's dream. The price of my disappeared future. I stared at that number until sunrise, until exhaustion gave way to a clarity I hadn't felt in years. Something had to change. I just hadn't known how, until that Sunday dinner, until the word loser gave me permission to finally say enough. The call came on a Thursday afternoon, 3 days after the gas station breakdown. I was at work, mid-shift in the ICU, monitoring a post-op patient's vitals when my phone buzzed. Lila's name flashed across the screen. I almost didn't answer. My hands were still shaky from the memory of standing in that parking lot, crying over a declined card and a life I no longer recognized as my own. But old habits die hard, and the guilt reflex was still stronger than my anger. Hey, I answered, stepping into the hallway. Katherine. Perfect timing. Lila's voice was bright, bubbly, the sound of someone whose biggest problem was choosing between good options. So I've been thinking about next semester, and I have the most amazing opportunity. My stomach clenched. Opportunity in Lila speak meant expensive. I'm listening, I said carefully, watching a nurse wheel a crash cart past me. Study abroad, she announced, like she'd just discovered fire. Can you believe it? Professor Hendricks, you know, the Renaissance guy, he's leading a program in Europe. Students get to study art history in the actual cities where it happened. Paris, London, Florence, Rome. Each city name landed like a stone in my chest. That sounds educational, I managed. Educational? Katherine, it's life-changing. Do you know how good this will look on my resume? The networking opportunities alone are insane. Plus, Professor Hendricks only takes 12 students, and he basically told me I'm a shoo-in if I apply. How much does it cost? The question hung in the air for a beat too long. Well, that's the thing, Lila said, her tone shifting to that practiced casualness she used when discussing my money. It's a semester program, so it replaces regular tuition. But there are some additional fees. Housing in Paris isn't cheap, and there's the airfare, and program costs, and obviously I'd need spending money for museums and meals and... Lila. How much? Around $15,000. Maybe a bit more depending on the exchange rate and... $15,000. My voice came out flat, dead. A patient's monitor beeped urgently down the hall, but I couldn't move. You want me to pay $15,000 for you to tour Europe? It's not touring, it's studying. There's a difference. And it's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, Katherine. You can't put a price on experiences like this. You can't, but I can, I thought. $15,000 was 6 months of my rent. A year of groceries. The cost of the master's degree I'd abandoned. The price of every dream I'd deferred. I don't have $15,000, I said quietly. Well, obviously not all at once. But you could set up a payment plan, right? Or maybe take out a small loan. It's only 1 semester, and think about what it'll mean for my future. Studying abroad is basically a requirement for anyone serious about international art curation. International art curation. A career path she'd mentioned exactly 0 times before this moment. Lila, I can't. Please don't say no without thinking about it, she cut in, and I could hear the edge creeping into her voice. The entitled frustration of someone used to getting what they wanted. This is important to me. You know how hard I've worked. How hard you've worked. The words were a match to kindling. I have to go, I said. There's a patient. Just think about it, okay? I need to submit my deposit by next week, but we can figure out the details. Love you. She hung up before I could respond. I stood in that hallway, surrounded by the beeping machines and antiseptic smell of the ICU, and felt something inside me calcify. Not break. Breaking implied there was something sudden about it. This was harder, slower. A transformation of tissue into stone. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed staring at my ceiling, doing math I'd done 1,000 times before. My checking account, $312 after paying my electricity bill. Savings account, $1,847, meant for emergencies. Credit cards, maxed out at a combined $8,200, all from Lila-related expenses I'd told myself I'd pay off, eventually. $15,000 might as well have been 15 million. My phone buzzed. A text from Mom. Mom, Lila told us about the study abroad program. How exciting. She's so lucky to have you supporting her dreams. I stared at the message, waiting for something else. An acknowledgement that this was too much. A question about whether I could actually afford it. Anything that suggested they saw me as something other than Lila's unlimited credit line. Nothing came. I typed and deleted 3 responses before settling on, can't talk now. At work. The lie was easier than the truth. Another buzz. Dad this time. Dad, your mother and I are so proud of Lila. This opportunity is incredible. You'll figure out the finances, you always do. That's what makes you so dependable, sweetheart. You always do. Those 3 words had become the soundtrack of my life. The expectation that I would bend, stretch, sacrifice, and somehow make the impossible work because that's what dependable Katherine did. When had helping become servitude? When had love become obligation? When had my entire identity been reduced to my ability to fund someone else's dreams? I got out of bed and opened my laptop. I created a spreadsheet. Column A, date. Column B, expense. Column C, amount. Then I started typing, pulling up old bank statements, credit card bills, Venmo receipts. Every payment I'd made for Lila over 5 years, documented with the cold precision of someone cataloging evidence. September 2020, textbooks, $847. October 2020, dorm supplies, $312. November 2020, emergency laptop, $1,200. January 2021, apartment deposit, $1,400. February 2021, rent, $700. March 2021, rent, $700. The list grew. Months became years. Small expenses became massive totals. I added categories: rent, utilities, groceries, emergencies, car insurance, phone bill, credit card payments for purchases I'd never even seen. By 2 a.m., I had it all laid out. 5 years of financial martyrdom in neat rows and columns. I clicked the sum function at the bottom. $127,340. $127,340. I stared at the number until my eyes burned. Then I opened a new browser tab and searched average cost of master's degree nursing. $45,000 to $60,000. I could have paid for my master's degree twice. I could have bought a house down payment. I could have traveled to every continent. I could have built a life. Instead, I'd funded Lila's fantasy while my own reality crumbled. My hands were shaking again, but not from exhaustion this time. From rage. Pure, clarifying rage. I pulled up my parents' contact and started typing. Lila told you about the study abroad program. Did she mention it costs $15,000? Did she mention I'm already in debt from supporting her? Did she mention I can't afford my own groceries half the time? I stared at the message. My thumb hovered over send. Then I deleted it. Because I knew what they'd say. The same thing they always said, you're so good at figuring things out. She's building her future. Family supports each other. The conversation wouldn't change until I changed it. Instead, I texted Lila. We need to talk about the study abroad program. Call me tomorrow. Her response came immediately, despite the late hour. Lila, OMG yes. I've been looking at apartments in Paris and they're so cute. There's one near the Louvre that's perfect. A little expensive but so worth it. Can we talk budget tomorrow? Budget. As if we'd ever had a budget. As if there had ever been limits to what she could ask for and expect to receive. Tomorrow. We'll talk. I closed my laptop and looked at the spreadsheet one more time. All those numbers. All those sacrifices. All those years of invisible labor that had bought Lila her once-in-a-lifetime opportunities, while stealing mine. The anger felt good. Clean. It burned away the guilt that had kept me trapped for so long. The next morning, Mom called before I'd even finished my coffee. Katherine, honey, about the study abroad program. I can't afford it, I cut in. Silence. Then, well, we're not asking you to pay for all of it. Maybe you could cover the airfare and the first month's housing, and Lila could apply for scholarships for the rest? I can't afford any of it, Mom. Don't be dramatic. You have a good job, and this is important. I'm $8,200 in credit card debt, I said, my voice sharp enough to cut. All from paying Lila's expenses. My savings are gone. I'm barely covering my own rent. There is no money for Paris. Well, you could pick up extra shifts. No. The word came out harder than I intended. I'm already working 70 hours a week. I'm not picking up extra shifts so Lila can eat croissants in France. Katherine Cluck, that is your sister. And I'm your daughter. The words exploded out of me. When was the last time either of you asked how I'm doing? When I last ate a full meal? Whether I'm okay? You only call when Lila needs something, and I'm done being treated like an ATM with a guilt complex. More silence. Heavier this time. You'll figure it out, Mom finally said, her voice cold. You always do. She hung up. I sat there, phone in hand, and felt something shift fundamentally inside me. The invisible chains that had bound me to their expectations, to Lila's entitlement, to my own misplaced sense of duty, they didn't break. They simply ceased to matter. I looked at the spreadsheet still open on my laptop. $127,340. The price of my silence. The cost of being dependable. I thought about my master's degree, abandoned. My retirement account, emptied. My health, deteriorating. My life, on hold. For what? So Lila could call me a loser while living off my labor? I opened a new document and started writing. Not a budget this time. A script. Words I'd rehearse until I could say them without shaking. Boundaries I'd enforce without guilt. Because the next family dinner was coming. And this time, I wouldn't be silent. I stared at my reflection in the dark laptop screen, hollow-eyed, exhausted, invisible. Then I whispered two words that felt like a prayer and a promise. No more. The dining room glowed with the kind of warmth that belonged in a Norman Rockwell painting. Candles flickered on the table, casting soft shadows across Mom's good china, the set she only brought out for special occasions. The smell of pot roast and rosemary filled the air, mingling with the sound of Dad's jazz playlist drifting from the kitchen speaker. It should have felt like home. Instead, it felt like a stage set for my final performance. Katherine. You made it. Mom's voice was bright as I stepped through the door, still in my scrubs from the day's shift. I debated not coming at all, had drafted and deleted 3 excuse texts. But something had pulled me here. Maybe the need for closure. Maybe the desire to finally be seen. Maybe just the small, dying hope that they'd surprise me. Traffic was bad, I lied, sliding into my usual chair. The one with the wobbly leg that no one had bothered to fix in 3 years. Lila was already seated across from me, scrolled through her phone with one hand while sipping wine with the other. She looked radiant, hair freshly highlighted, skin glowing with the kind of health that comes from regular sleep and minimal stress. Everything I wasn't. Lila, put the phone away, Mom chided gently, setting down a platter of roasted vegetables. This is family time. Lila obliged with an exaggerated sigh, flashing me a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Sorry. Just coordinating with some friends about spring break. So many details to figure out. Spring break. I'd almost forgotten about spring break. Another expense I'd been avoiding thinking about. Dad emerged from the kitchen carrying the pot roast, his face flushed from the heat. There she is. Our girl who's going to see the world. Our girl. Not their girls, plural. Just the one worth celebrating. We're so excited about your study abroad program, Lila, Mom gushed, settling into her seat. Paris. Can you imagine? I could imagine. I'd spent the last week imagining it in excruciating financial detail. I know, right? Lila's eyes lit up. I've already been looking at apartments. There's this gorgeous place in the Marais district, a studio with a balcony overlooking a courtyard. It's a little more than the university housing, but the location is perfect. Right near the Picasso Museum and... How much more? I heard myself ask. Lila blinked. Sorry? Then the university housing. How much more? Oh. She waved her hand dismissively. Like $400 a month? But it's worth it for the experience. You can't put a price on living like a real Parisian. $400 a month. Times 4 months. $1,600 on top of the already impossible $15,000. Sounds lovely, I said flatly. Mom started passing plates around, narrating the meal the way she always did when she was nervous. The pot roast came out perfectly this time. I used that recipe from Aunt Marie, the one with the red wine reduction. Katherine, you're not eating. Are you feeling okay? I looked down at my plate. At the pot roast I hadn't touched, the vegetables I couldn't bring myself to taste. My stomach was too tight, twisted into knots that had been forming for days. I'm fine, I lied. You work too hard, Dad said, cutting into his meat. You should take better care of yourself, sweetheart. The irony was so thick I could choke on it. Speaking of the study abroad program, Lila continued, oblivious, I need to submit my housing deposit by Friday. Katherine, did you have a chance to look at the payment plan options I sent you? The table went quiet. Mom's fork paused halfway to her mouth. Dad suddenly found his wine glass fascinating. I didn't receive any payment plan options, I said carefully. I texted them to you. Like, 3 days ago. Lila pulled out her phone, scrolling. See? Right here. I outlined everything: the deposit, monthly housing costs, estimated food budget, transportation. I saw the text, I interrupted. I meant I didn't receive any payment plan. Just a list of expenses you expect me to cover. Lila's brow furrowed. Well, yeah. I figured you'd work out the details like you usually do. You're better with that kind of stuff anyway. Better at what? Finding money I don't have? The edge in my voice made everyone look up. Katherine, Mom started. No. I put down my fork with a sharp clink against the china. I'm done paying for everything. The words hung in the air like smoke from a gun. Lila laughed, a short, nervous sound. What are you talking about? You're not paying for everything. I have scholarships. That cover tuition. Nothing else. For 5 years, I've paid your rent, utilities, groceries, car insurance, phone bill, emergency expenses that aren't emergencies, and credit card bills for purchases I never approved. I've worked 70-hour weeks while you posted wine-tasting photos and called it networking. That's not fair, Lila said, her voice rising. I work hard at school. I work hard at 2 jobs so you can work hard at school. I was standing now, though I didn't remember getting up. I'm $8,200 in debt. I haven't had a vacation in 4 years. I can't afford to buy new scrubs. I skipped meals so you could eat at restaurants I can't afford to look at. Girls, let's calm down, Dad attempted. No, let's not calm down, I said, my voice sharp as broken glass. Because I'm tired of being calm while everyone takes advantage of it. I made a spreadsheet, Dad. Want to know how much I've spent on Lila in 5 years? $127,000. $127,000. Mom's face went pale. That can't be right. I have receipts. Every payment, every transfer, every emergency that somehow only I was expected to handle. I turned to Lila. And you want $15,000 more for Paris. Tell me, when exactly were you planning to contribute anything to your own life? Lila's shock was morphing into anger, her cheeks flushing red. You're the one who offered to help. No one forced you. You're right. No one forced me. You just expected it. All of you did. And I was stupid enough to believe that's what family meant. This is what family means. Lila shot back, standing to match me. Supporting each other. Being there when it matters. Where were you on my birthday last year? The question came out quiet, deadly. Or the year before? When was the last time you asked how I was doing? Whether I needed anything? Whether I was okay? Silence. You don't support me, Lila. You use me. There's a difference. That's not true, she said, but her voice wavered. Isn't it? Name one thing you've done for me in 5 years that didn't involve asking for money. Lila's mouth opened and closed. Her eyes darted to our parents, searching for backup. Katherine, that's unfair, Mom said, her voice carrying that particular tone of maternal disappointment. Lila's been focused on her education. You can't expect. I can't expect my own sister to remember I exist beyond my bank account. You're being dramatic, Lila snapped, recovering her composure. This is just you being bitter because your life isn't going anywhere. You're stuck in the same job, same apartment, same everything, and instead of doing something about it, you're taking it out on me. The words landed like physical blows. You think I'm stuck? My voice was eerily calm now. You're right. I am stuck. Want to know why? I pulled out my phone, opened the spreadsheet I'd saved there, and turned it toward her. This is why. Every dollar on this list is a dollar I didn't spend on my master's degree. On traveling. On dating. On having a life. I'm stuck, Lila, because for 5 years I've been carrying you on my back while you complained about the view. That's not my fault. Lila's voice cracked. I didn't ask to be born into a family without money. I didn't ask for parents who couldn't afford. Don't you dare, Dad cut in, his face reddening. We did our best. Your best was making Katherine into a second parent. Lila shot back, and for a moment I saw something like understanding flash in her eyes. Then it was gone, replaced by defensive anger. If anyone's to blame here, it's Mom and Dad for putting this on you in the first place. So it's our fault? Mom's voice went shrill. We raised you both to support each other, to be there for family. You raised her to take and me to give. I said. And you convinced me it was love. The room fell into terrible silence. Dad cleared his throat. Katherine, I think you're overreacting. We're just asking you to help your sister with one more semester. One more payment. One more sacrifice. I laughed, a harsh sound that didn't feel like it came from me. It's never just one more with any of you. So what? Lila's voice dripped with contempt. You're just going to abandon me? Leave me to figure this out alone like some kind of loser? I finished for her. Like a loser whose life is going nowhere? Her face flushed. I didn't mean. Yes, you did. You meant every word. Because that's how you see me, isn't it? The sad older sister with no life of her own, whose only purpose is funding yours. Katherine, that's not, Mom tried. Tell me I'm wrong, I challenged, looking at each of them. Tell me you see me as anything other than Lila's safety net. No one spoke. The silence was answer enough. Lila's expression shifted then, hardening into something ugly. You know what? Fine. You want to know what I think? I think you're jealous. I think you're bitter and jealous because I'm actually doing something with my life while you're stuck being a nurse nobody appreciates, living in your sad little apartment, with no friends, no relationship, nothing. You're a loser, Katherine. And cutting me off won't change that. The word hung in the air between us. Loser. I felt something inside me, the last thread of obligation, of guilt, of familial duty, simply dissolve. I looked at my baby sister, this person I'd sacrificed everything for, and felt nothing but clarity. You're right, I said softly. I am a loser. I've lost 5 years of my life, $127,000, and my self-respect. But not anymore. I picked up my purse. Katherine, sit down, Dad commanded. We're not finished. Yes, we are. I met his eyes. I'm done. No more rent payments. No more utilities. No more emergencies. No more study abroad programs. Lila wants to go to Paris? She can figure it out herself. You want to support her dreams? Open your own wallets for once. You can't do this. Lila's voice rose to a shriek. I need that deposit by Friday. The apartment, the program. Not my problem. Katherine, please, Mom reached for me. I stepped back. You all made a choice. You chose to see me as a resource instead of a person. Now you get to live with that choice. If you walk out that door, Dad said, his voice cold, don't expect us to forget this. I smiled, genuinely smiled for the first time in months. Good, I said. I don't want you to forget. I want you to remember every time you look at Lila and wonder who's going to save her now. I walked to the door. Behind me, Lila was crying. Mom was calling my name. Dad was saying something about family and regret and responsibility. I opened the door and stepped into the cool evening air. For the first time in 5 years, I felt light. Free. Like someone who'd finally stopped losing and started living. The first text came at 6:47 a.m., 3 hours after I'd walked out of that dining room and into something that felt dangerously like hope. Lila, I can't believe you're doing this to me. After everything we've been through. I stared at the message over my morning coffee, actual good coffee from the cafe down the street, purchased without guilt for the first time in months. I didn't respond. By 7:15, there were 6 more messages. Lila, do you even care that you're ruining my life? Lila, I have to withdraw from the program. Withdraw. Do you understand what that means for my future? Lila, Mom is crying. Dad won't talk to anyone. You've destroyed this family. Lila, fine. Don't answer. But you'll regret this. Lila, I never knew you were this selfish. Lila, you're dead to me. I sipped my coffee and watched the messages populate my screen like a real-time documentary of narcissistic collapse. Each one was a masterclass in manipulation, guilt, anger, threats, victimhood, cycling through emotional weapons she'd used successfully for years. The difference was that this time, they bounced off harmlessly. I'd spent 5 years being emotionally permeable, absorbing every attack, every expectation, every demand. But something had crystallized during that walk from my parents' house to my car. Some fundamental shift in how I saw myself. I wasn't a resource. I wasn't a safety net. I wasn't a supporting character in Lila's story. I was a person who'd finally remembered she had a right to exist. I blocked her number and finished my coffee in peaceful silence. By Monday afternoon, Lila had taken her manipulation public. My coworker Denise found it first, pulling me aside during my lunch break with her phone already open to Instagram. Katherine? Is everything okay with your family? Lila's post filled the screen. A black and white photo of her looking pensive and vulnerable, staring out a window with artfully tousled hair. At Lila Cluck, sometimes the people you sacrifice the most for are the ones who hurt you deepest. Betrayal wears many faces, but the cruelest is the one that looks like family. Broken heart #family isn't always #betrayed by blood #stronger alone. The comments were a Greek chorus of support from people who had no idea what they were supporting. OMG babe, what happened? Sending you love. You deserve better. Family can be so toxic. You're better off without them. I scrolled further. She'd posted it to Facebook too, with slightly different wording but the same wounded martyr aesthetic. 63 comments. 47 shares. Want to tell me what's going on? Denise asked gently. My sister's mad that I stopped paying for her entire life, I said, handing back the phone. Denise's eyebrows shot up. Wait, what? I gave her the abbreviated version. 5 years of financial support. The study abroad demand. The dinner explosion. Her eyes grew wider with each detail. Jesus, Katherine. That's... I had no idea. No one did. I stood, my lunch break nearly over. That was kind of the problem. By Tuesday, Lila had escalated. The GoFundMe appeared in my email inbox, forwarded by 3 different relatives with subject lines ranging from, "Have you seen this?" to, "What is going on?" Help Lila achieve her dreams. My name is Lila Cluck, and I'm a senior at Hillcrest University studying art history. I've been accepted into a prestigious study abroad program in Paris, a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity that could change the trajectory of my career. Unfortunately, I've recently lost my primary financial support due to family circumstances beyond my control. My parents are unable to help due to their own financial constraints, and I'm facing the heartbreaking reality of having to withdraw from this program unless I can raise the funds. I'm not asking for charity, I'm asking for investment in a young woman's future. Your donation will help cover housing, program fees, and living expenses while I study in Paris. Every dollar brings me closer to my dream. Thank you for believing in me when others have given up. Goal, $15,000. Raised, $340. Donors, 12. I read it twice, my coffee turning cold in my hands. The audacity was almost impressive. She'd rewritten history in real time, transforming herself from entitled beneficiary to abandoned victim. Family circumstances beyond my control. Lost my primary financial support. When others have given up. Not a word about 5 years of free ride. Not a mention of $127,000 already spent. Just a girl with dreams, betrayed by cruel circumstance. I forwarded the link to my parents with a single line, "This is what you enabled." Then I donated $5 with a public comment, "From your former ATM. Best of luck funding your own dreams for once." I deleted it 30 seconds later. She didn't deserve even that much of my attention. Dad called that evening. I let it go to voicemail. "Katherine, this has gone too far. Your mother is beside herself. Lila is talking about dropping out of school entirely because she can't handle the stress. We need to sit down as a family and work this out. This silent treatment is childish, Anne." I deleted the message before he finished. Mom texted, "This cruelty isn't like you. What happened to the kind, caring daughter I raised?" I responded, "She learned to set boundaries. Maybe you should try it." She didn't text back. More voicemails came throughout the week. Dad's grew increasingly angry, Mom's increasingly tearful. The theme was consistent: I was selfish, cruel, heartless, destroying the family, abandoning my responsibilities. On Thursday, I listened to one all the way through. "Don't recognize you anymore," Mom was saying, her voice thick with tears. The Katherine I know wouldn't abandon her sister in her time of need. She wouldn't turn her back on family. "I don't know what happened to you, but this person you've become? She's not my daughter." I sat with that for a long moment, feeling for the guilt that should have accompanied it. It didn't come. Instead, I called her back. "Hello?" She sounded surprised I'd answered. "You're right," I said calmly. "The Katherine you knew wouldn't abandon Lila. She'd empty her bank account, max out her credit cards, and work herself into the ground to make sure her baby sister got everything she wanted. That Katherine was a doormat. I'm not her anymore." "Katherine. You taught Lila this, Mom. You and Dad both. You taught her that her dreams matter more than anyone else's needs. That she deserves everything she wants just for existing. That other people exist to facilitate her comfort. Every time you called me dependable or told me to figure it out, you taught her that using people was acceptable as long as they were family." Silence on the other end. "So when you say you don't recognize me?" "Good. I don't want to be recognized by people who only saw me as a solution to their parenting failures." I hung up before she could respond. Something strange happened in the weeks after the dinner. I started sleeping. Not the fitful, anxiety-riddled half-sleep I'd survived on for years, waking every few hours to check my phone for Lila's latest emergency. Real sleep. 7, sometimes 8 hours of uninterrupted rest that left me feeling almost human. I went to yoga for the first time in 4 years. The instructor kept saying things like, "Release what no longer serves you," and "create space for growth," and instead of rolling my eyes at the New Age language, I felt it in my bones. I was releasing. I was creating space. I reconnected with Sarah, a friend from nursing school I'd gradually ghosted because I could never afford to go out and was too ashamed to explain why. We met for brunch, my treat, paid for with money that would have gone to Lila's electricity bill. "You look different," Sarah said, studying me over mimosas I could actually afford. "Different how?" "I don't know. Lighter? Less." She searched for the word. "Less haunted." I laughed. I stopped being a ghost in my own life. I told her everything. She listened with growing horror, occasionally interjecting with, "What the actual fuck," and "You're kidding," and she said, "What?" "I can't believe you dealt with that alone for 5 years, she said when I finished. "I can't believe I thought it was love." We stayed at brunch for 3 hours, and when the check came, I paid it without calculating how it would affect the rest of my week. Because it wouldn't. The money was mine now. My time was mine. My life was mine. It felt revolutionary. The call came from Dad on a Wednesday evening, 3 weeks after the dinner. I almost didn't answer, but something in the timing, 8:47 p.m., well past his usual passive-aggressive voicemail hours, made me pick up. "Katherine." His voice was strange. Flat and shocked in equal measure. What's wrong? It's Lila. We just got a call from our credit card company. There's been unusual activity on the card. I waited. $4,700 in charges over the last week. Designer stores, restaurants, a spa day. He sounded like he was reading from a script he couldn't quite believe. She used our card. The one we gave her for emergencies years ago. We forgot she even had it. The irony was so perfect I almost laughed. She maxed it out, Dad continued. Our credit limit was $5,000. She spent almost all of it in 7 days. Your mother we can't pay this, Katherine. We're already stretched thin with the mortgage, Anne. So tell her to pay it back. She doesn't have the money. She spent it on, there's charges here for Gucci, Prada, some restaurant that cost $400 for one meal. Then she can get a job and pay it back in installments. Katherine, you don't understand. I understand perfectly, I said, my voice calm as still water. You're calling because you finally experienced what I lived with for 5 years. Lila taking money that isn't hers to fund a lifestyle she hasn't earned. The panic when you realize you can't afford it. The expectation that someone else will fix her mistakes. This is different. It's not. It's exactly the same. The only difference is whose money she's stealing this time. Silence. We can't afford this, Dad said quietly. We're 62 years old. We're supposed to be thinking about retirement, not paying off our daughter's shopping sprees. Welcome to my last 5 years. Katherine, please. No. The word felt good. Clean. You wanted me to figure it out. You told me I was dependable. You said I'd find a way. Now it's your turn. Figure it out, Dad. Find a way. But I hung up. That night, I opened my phone and navigated to my blocked contacts. Lila's number sat there, a digital ghost of a relationship that had been dead for longer than I'd admitted. I deleted it entirely. Not blocked anymore. Just gone. Erased. No way to unblock on impulse, no way to cave during a moment of weakness. She simply ceased to exist in my phone, my contacts, my immediate reach. The silence that followed felt like standing in fresh snow. Clean. Untouched. Full of possibility. My phone buzzed. Sarah, asking if I wanted to join her book club next week. I typed back, yes. What are we reading? Another buzz. Marcus, the doctor I'd ghosted months ago. Hey stranger. Wondering if you'd like to grab coffee sometime? No pressure. I stared at the message. The old Katherine would have deleted it, convinced she didn't have time or money or energy for dating. The new Katherine typed, I'd like that. When are you free? Outside my window, the city lights sparkled against the dark sky. Somewhere out there, Lila was probably crafting another sob story, another manipulation, another attempt to make herself the victim of circumstances she'd created. Let her. I was done being a supporting character in her drama. For the first time in 5 years, I was the protagonist of my own story. And it was just beginning. The promotion came 6 weeks after I'd walked out of that dining room and into my own life. Katherine, you've been eligible for the clinical nurse specialist position for over a year, my supervisor Maria said, sliding the offer letter across her desk. I'm honestly shocked you never applied. I stared at the paper. Better hours. Better pay. Better everything. The position I'd turned down 2 years ago because it required occasional relocation for training, and I couldn't leave while Lila needed me. I wasn't ready before, I said simply. And now? I signed the paperwork without hesitation. Now I am. The raise was substantial, $18,000 more annually. Money that would go into my savings account, my retirement fund, my life. Not into someone else's fantasy. I started that same week. My apartment transformed slowly, deliberately. I'd lived in that studio for 4 years, treating it like a temporary shelter rather than a home. Blank walls. Mismatched furniture from thrift stores. Nothing that felt like mine because I'd never had the energy or resources to claim it. Now, I painted. A warm sage green for the main wall, cream for the others. I bought actual curtains instead of the bedsheet I'd been using. A small bookshelf from IKEA that I assembled myself on a Saturday morning, drinking coffee and listening to music without checking my phone every 5 minutes for Lila's latest crisis. I hung art, prints from local artists at the farmer's market. A photograph of the coastline I wanted to visit. A motivational quote that would have seemed cheesy 6 months ago but now felt earned. She remembered who she was and the game changed. Sarah came over for dinner one evening and stopped in the doorway, taking it all in. "Katherine, this place looks incredible." "It feels like home now," I said, surprised by how true it was. For the first time since I moved in. We ate pasta I'd actually cooked instead of microwaved ramen. We drank wine that cost more than $8 a bottle. We talked about books and travel plans and the doctor I'd been seeing, Marcus, who thought my newfound boundaries were sexy as hell and never once made me feel guilty for prioritizing myself. "You're glowing," Sarah observed. "Like, actually radiant." I felt it. The lightness. The peace. The fundamental shift from surviving to living. My savings account grew steadily. 500. Then 500. Then 500. Then 1,000. Then $2,000. Numbers that represented security instead of panic. A future instead of perpetual crisis management. I could breathe. The text came from Mom 8 weeks after the dinner. Brief, clinical, like she was reporting weather conditions. "Mom, Lila is moving back home. Thought you should know." I stared at the message over my morning coffee, a ritual that had become sacred, this quiet moment before the day began. Part of me wanted details. What happened to Paris? To the GoFundMe? To her once-in-a-lifetime opportunity? But a larger part of me, the part that was finally healing, didn't care. I deleted the text and went to work. Sarah, however, had sources. Mutual friends who were still connected to Lila's social media ecosystem, who watched the slow-motion car crash with the same morbid fascination people reserve for reality TV. So apparently, Sarah said during our weekly coffee date, the study abroad program fell through. Not enough funding, or something. And she bombed her finals because she was too stressed about money to focus. Stressed about money, I repeated flatly. Imagine that. But wait, it gets better. She had to move out of her apartment because she couldn't make rent. Tried to crash with friends, but turns out when you're not paying for everything, people are less excited to have you around. I sipped my latte and said nothing. She's back in your parents' house. In her old bedroom. At 23. Sarah paused. Your mom posted something on Facebook about adult children needing time to find themselves. Of course she did. Aren't you even a little curious what she's doing now? I considered the question honestly. Was I curious? Did I care that Lila's carefully constructed life had collapsed the moment my money stopped holding it together? No, I said finally. Her life isn't my responsibility anymore. Neither is her failure. Sarah grinned. Damn, girl. I love who you're becoming. I'm becoming who I always was, I corrected. I just stopped apologizing for it. Sunday mornings became my time for reflection. I discovered a small park 3 blocks from my apartment, one of those hidden urban oases with old trees and a pond where ducks congregated expectantly. I brought my journal, a habit I'd started at Sarah's suggestion. Write it out, she'd said. All of it. The anger, the grief, the growth. You've been through something traumatic. Give it space. So I did. Week 10 post-liberation, I wrote, watching a mother duck lead her ducklings across the water. Finally understanding that boundaries aren't walls, they're doors. I get to choose who comes through. Realized today that I spent 5 years confusing sacrifice with love. Real love doesn't require you to disappear. It doesn't demand that you set yourself on fire to keep someone else warm. Mom called again. I didn't answer. Dad left a voicemail about healing the family rift. But there's no rift, just clarity. They want the old Katherine back because she was easier to use. But she's gone, and I don't miss her. A jogger passed, nodding hello. I nodded back, struck by how normal everything felt. How uncomplicated. No urgent texts demanding immediate responses. No calculations about which bill to pay late. No guilt gnawing at me for daring to exist. Just peace. The hardest part, I wrote, isn't anger at them. It's grief for the person I could have been if I'd learned to say no sooner. The master's degree. The travels. The relationships. The version of myself that got buried under obligation. But maybe she's not buried. Maybe she's just been waiting. I closed the journal and sat with the morning sun on my face, feeling something profound settle into my bones. Forgiveness wasn't necessary. Neither was reconciliation. What mattered was reclamation. On a Saturday afternoon, I loaded 4 boxes of textbooks into my car. Nursing manuals, tutoring materials, study guides, remnants of the double life I'd lived to fund someone else's dreams. The public library was quiet, smelling of old paper and possibility. The volunteer at the donation desk smiled as I hefted the boxes onto the counter. These are wonderful, she said, flipping through a nursing pharmacology textbook. Students will love these. I hope they help someone, I said. Tutoring materials too. Are you a teacher? Was. For a while. I paused, choosing my words carefully. I'm helping on my own terms now. She nodded like she understood something I hadn't said. That's how it should be. I'd already signed up for a volunteer program at Mercy General, teaching underprivileged nursing students once a month. One Saturday. On my schedule. Using my expertise to lift others up without drowning myself. Help on my terms. Support with boundaries. Love without self-annihilation. Revolutionary concepts that felt like common sense now. As I drove home, my phone buzzed. An unknown number. I almost ignored it, but something made me answer. Hello? Katherine. Lila's voice was small, tentative. Different from the entitled tone I'd grown accustomed to. It's me. I got a new number. My heart didn't race. My hands didn't shake. I simply waited. Can we talk? I'm outside your building. She looked smaller somehow, standing in my apartment lobby. No designer clothes, just jeans and a sweater that had seen better days. Her hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail instead of professionally styled. The Instagram perfect polish had cracked, revealing someone who looked lost and very young. Thank you for seeing me, she said as I approached. I haven't decided if I'm seeing you. What do you want, Lila? To apologize. Her eyes were red-rimmed. For everything. For the things I said, the way I acted, the way I took you for granted. I'm so sorry, Katherine. The words I'd imagined hearing for years. They should have felt like vindication. Instead, they felt empty. Okay, I said neutrally. Okay? She blinked. That's it? What did you expect? Tears? Immediate forgiveness? A hug and a promise that everything's fine now? She faltered. I thought maybe we could start over. I've been in therapy. I'm seeing things differently now. I understand what I put you through, and I want to make it right. How? However you want. I could pay you back, it would take time, but I'd set up a payment plan. Or we could just talk. Rebuild our relationship slowly. Whatever you need. I studied her. The teary eyes. The trembling lip. The performance of contrition. Maybe it was real. Maybe therapy had actually given her insight. Maybe she'd hit rock bottom and genuinely wanted to change. Or maybe this was just another manipulation, a softer, more sophisticated version of the same game. Either way, it didn't matter. You'll figure it out, I said calmly. What? Your life. Your finances. Your relationships. You'll figure it out, Lila. Like I always had to. Katherine, please. I spent 5 years being your safety net. Your ATM. Your solution to problems you created. I'm done with that role. But I'm changing. I'm different now. Maybe you are. I hope you are, actually. But that's your journey, not my responsibility. Tears spilled down her cheeks. You're my sister. And you called me a loser. Said my life was going nowhere. Made me feel invisible for years while spending my money and posting about your amazing experiences. My voice stayed steady, calm. Being your sister almost destroyed me, Lila. I'm not going back to that. So that's it? You're just done with me? I considered lying, softening the blow. But she deserved honesty more than comfort. Yes. I'm done. What if I really have changed? What if I could prove it to you? Then prove it to yourself. Get a job. Pay back mom and dad. Build a life that doesn't require someone else's sacrifice. Become someone who gives instead of just takes. And then? Hope crept into her voice. If I do all that, would you? I don't know, I interrupted. Maybe someday. Maybe never. But you don't get to do the work just to earn back access to me. You do it because it's who you want to be. She stood there, tears streaming, looking like the lost little sister I'd once adored. I felt sympathy. But not responsibility. I should go, I said gently. Good luck with everything, Lila. I really do hope you figure it out. I walked past her to the elevator. She called my name once, but I didn't turn around. The elevator doors closed on her stricken face. I rode up to my floor feeling lighter than I had in years. That evening, I sat on my newly decorated couch with my journal, Marcus texting me about weekend plans, Sarah's book club recommendation on my coffee table. A life. My life. Full and rich and entirely my own. I wrote one final entry about Lila, about family, about the lessons learned through pain. For years, I called it love, the sacrifice, the sleepless nights, the disappeared dreams. I thought that's what family meant, giving until you had nothing left. Bleeding yourself dry to keep others comfortable. But love doesn't drain you empty. Real love doesn't demand that you disappear so someone else can shine. Love teaches you when to hold on. And, more importantly, when to let go. I closed the journal and looked around my apartment. At the life I'd built from the ashes of obligation. At the future stretching ahead, bright and unclaimed. Somewhere, Lila was probably crying. Mom was probably wringing her hands. Dad was probably disappointed. Let them be. Their feelings weren't my responsibility anymore. I was free. And freedom, I'd learned, wasn't the absence of love. It was the presence of boundaries. The courage to choose yourself. The radical act of believing you deserved more than scraps from your own table. I picked up my phone and texted Marcus, still on for dinner tomorrow? His response was immediate, absolutely. Can't wait. Neither could I. For the first time in 5 years, I couldn't wait for tomorrow. Because it was mine. Finally, completely, unapologetically mine.